What's up, everybody? My name's Nate Greene, and welcome to Game Rehab, where I take 6 months to make a video about games that none of you even played anyway. But that's the whole point. Today's game is Enslaved, Odyssey to the West. Developed in 2010 by Ninja Theory, the company behind Heavenly Sword and the very, very ill-received Devil May Cry remake. Enslaved was released to middling reviews. It scored like a solid 80 on Metacritic, at least according to my ability to type Enslaved video game into Google. Enslaved is inspired by a borderline ancient Chinese novel called, go figure, Journey to the West. A novel which has inspired everything from Jackie Chan movies to Dragon Ball Z, so there's apparently plenty of leeway with the plot and characters. It stars Monkey, a very angry, recently kidnapped dude whose main redeeming quality is that he was played by Andy Serkis somehow, who, coincidentally, was heavily involved with the script, as just a fun fact. He was also pretty good at climbing shit and bashing robot faces in with his fists and staff. Monkey, not Andy Serkis, though I imagine the latter is pretty good at this point, regardless. Co-starring is Trip, tech whiz and all-around emotional anchor. Trip enslaves Monkey early on in the story through a headband that has the ability to overlay a HUD, set waypoints, and murder the poor bastard wearing it if they don't listen to the person controlling it. All pretty standard things for a headband. Trip makes Monkey escort her through the robot apocalyptic world that they inhabit to her home village, which, unfolds pretty much as you'd expect it to. While I completely agree that Enslaved isn't without its fair share of problems, it deserved to be much better received than it was. Some might even say it deserved to succeed, or maybe even have a sequel if that's your bag. God knows it left room for one. And now comes the part where I'll just claim tradition on Game Rehab, since it stretches back to entire reviews. And I'll start with its negatives first, just to get them out of the way, because this game is 100% deserving of your attention. As with just about every non-Nintendo platformer out there, the camera in Enslaved is, well, less than perfect. The main problem with it being that it seems to think that it's better than you. It knows what it wants to do at all times, and if you have anything to say about it, anything at all, by, say, moving the right thumbstick, Enslaved will let you move the camera. But it'll also fuck with everything you're trying to accomplish by moving the fucking camera. So the lesson to learn here is that the camera actually is better than you, and you need to just leave it alone or it's going to kill you all the goddamn time. So I really only have two other complaints, one of which being the sticky platforming, which is an issue considering, hey, it's a platformer. But the main character, Monkey, has a tendency to want to finish whatever animation he's performing, urgency or instant death be damned. So even though the next point to climb to is clearly marked by the shiny, you can't actually get to it until Monkey swings his slowly animated ass off the point you're on. It leads to some frustrating sections, which are luckily very few and far between. So my last gripe is with an entire character, and if you've played the game, you most likely know who I'm talking about. The eponymous Piggy. Created because I assume Ninja Theory felt that they just needed a creepy, morbidly obese, and strangely agile character whose sole purpose is to creep on the heroine of the story whom he's known since she was a child. Piggy is, on a scale of 1 to 10, just the absolute fucking worst. But don't let his existence throw you off the game. On account of you really only meet him a little under 3/4 of the way through the plot, and you'll just eventually learn to ignore him, I guess. He's terrible. I hate him. I hate him so much. He even has his own DLC. I didn't play it because I hate him so much. And now, for what you've all been presumably watching this far to get to, the good parts. The reasons you should actually play the apparently shitty game I'm doing my best to cram down your throats. First and foremost, Enslaved is fun to play. If it wasn't, I wouldn't be doing this. It's a solid game through and through. Combat, though, is relatively simple. You tap X and Y, at least on Xbox, for heavy and light attacks, which string together satisfyingly. To counter the simple combat, you have shielded enemies and super robot assholes, who are essentially immune to your assault until you unleash a stun attack or choose to shoot them in the face with your nonsensical energy blasts from the end of Monkey's magic extendo staff. There's also satisfying finishing attacks you're prompted for after sufficiently wailing on a baddie for long enough. And now for all I've talked up the combat, it's actually surprisingly light. There's not a whole lot of it. The majority of your time will be spent exploring and platforming, which is honestly not a bad thing. Enslaved is a beautiful game, even 6 years after the fact. Especially if you take into account that when it was released, the video game industry was in the middle of its brown and gray phase, where any colors that were not brown or gray, with the occasional explosion of red and orange, were apparently fucking illegal. I blame Gears of War and Call of Duty, but that's just me. Honestly, to play a game in 2010 that had honest-to-God color was a much needed breath of fresh air. Naturally, the secondary reason I recommend games, aside from them actually being fun to play, the plot. Enslaved is almost wholly unique in its setting of a robot apocalypse where the world hasn't just been reduced to ruin, but instead nature has been allowed to reclaim the planet that the machines now roam. Kind of like I Am Legend, but with less zombie vampire things and more robots. Humanity exists in isolated settlements that are subject to raid by the machines at any time. Led by the mysterious Pyramid, the machines enslave humans for unknown reasons, but you better believe that Monkey and Trip get to the bottom of it before their odyssey is over. Aside from the personal development of the main characters, which is significant, the story will take you in unexpected directions. Yes, it ends with plenty of room for a sequel, but it is far from incomplete. If you can believe it, Enslaved actually had a decent amount of hype behind it back in the day. When it launched to the scores it did, though, because, remember, video game review scores. If it's not a 90, it's not worth buying. People just seem to forget about it, to the point where when I asked friends and coworkers if it was worth reviewing on my channel, most only had vague memories of it even existing. The most common response I got was, "Oh, I always meant to play that." The gist of what I have to say is that Enslaved is absolutely deserving of your time and the very slight expense of buying it. It's a fantastic game that was just left behind in an era that apparently couldn't appreciate it. I guess it wasn't gray or brown enough. But that's Enslaved. And remember, if you even remotely enjoyed this review, to like my video and subscribe to my channel so that I feel obligated to get more reviews out on a decently consistent basis. This is Game Rehab, and thanks for watching, everyone.